We are live here with Craig Hella Johnson, the artistic director of Conspirare. Craig, are you here with me?
I'm here with you, Tesfa.
I wanted to just let a little bit of time rest after that piece. I mean, the last 4 minutes, as those basses rang those low D's, I just wanted the sound to wash over me. And it's such a deeply spiritual piece of music. So congratulations on just a, I love it. And I gotta be totally honest. I was just now exposed to this piece in the last year, and to hear it now on two recordings has just been such an awesome journey for me. Um, how are you doing tonight, Greg?
Tesfa, thanks. I'm doing really well. So happy to be here with you and have a chance to talk about this great piece and experience it again with you and other folks hanging out with us. It's a very special piece to all of us, and I'm just happy to see it have kind of find a way deeper into the repertoire and deeper into people's listening experience. And yeah, but all is good down here in hot, muggy Texas.
We actually got a cold front come in today. It was in the 40s. I was like, "Whoa, it's like May. Come on, hook a brother up with some 80s."
Come on down.
uh,
We got some eight for you down here.
Deal. As long as you can take me to the barbecue place. What is it? Salt Lake Barbecue? Well, I know you don't go there, but
Salt Lake.
somebody will take me.
I know how to take you there. I know the road. I'm going to bring you.
All right. So you've had a pretty busy spring. I mean, you won a Grammy. Congratulations for best choral performance. The last time we hung out, we actually talked about that recording. So congrats to you and your
Thank,
organization. Org.
thank you, Tessa. That was sure a lovely surprise and tons of fun.
And you've had a bunch of premieres. Talk to us about those premieres you had this spring.
Yeah, sure. It's been an amazing spring, really. Got one of your wonderful Minnesota boys, Jake Runestad, was just down here about a week and a half ago, and we premiered a new piece of his called "Come to the Woods," and that was a text of John Muir, the great
Hmm.
American naturalist who founded the Sierra Club. And, it's a fantastic piece for SATB and piano, and we just had a ball with it. It's an absolute joyride and very exquisitely beautiful also. So we were so happy to have Jake down here. And yeah, you mentioned the spring. It's been a lot of premieres. So Jake's piece, and then we also did a premiere of Eric Banks' This Delicate Universe, which I can tell you about. And then also back in April, we had a really fun night with a 45-minute work, brand new piece by Nico Muhly.
Whoa.
This is called How Little You Are. And the ask that we did for Nico was, could he write a piece for 3 guitar quartets and voices? And it's an awesome piece, and super, super excited about that. So we had about 2,000 people get to hear that piece on the premiere night, and he was down here for that. And we had the LA Guitar Quartet, just the premier quartet traveling around all over the world playing their beautiful stuff, and they joined us. And then we were also joined by 2 other absolutely fabulous quartets, the Texas Guitar Quartet, close to home here, and some fine, fine musicians, and then the Dublin Quartet came over from Ireland. And so it was really like a choir of guitars and a choir of voices. The texture was like nothing you've ever heard,
Mm.
absolutely special. The texts were these texts by women living in the prairie in the United States in the expansionist period in the United States, so in the Southwest, and it came from their journals, 2 women in particular, and kind of ran the gamut from sort of what was going on in the natural world and the storms that came across the prairies and what they experienced trying to keep a home and a community together while the men were out, traversing the land and hunting, and they were keeping the community intact. And there's one of the texts about a loss of a child out on the prairie, and some joyful texts about sort of the grandeur in nature. And anyway, it's just awesome, special. And you'll hear more about it. I'm eager to share that more with the world also. And yeah, and then the other premiere was this really extraordinary piece by Eric Banks. That was a product of a Chorus America Dale Warland commissioning grant, and from a few years ago, and it was supposed to be just a 5-minute piece that actually expanded into a 30-minute piece, 5 movements, all set to the gorgeous words of the Greek poet Cavafy. Eric's in love with Cavafy's poem, and he helped us fall in love with Cavafy's words. And uh, oh, it's really extraordinary. One of the hardest things we've sung in a while, I will say, because of the demands on the singers. They really were treated for all those 5 minutes like orchestral players, and the basses in the choir had to play these long, sustaining low tones for long, long extended periods, and the upper registers were demanding. We had to do a lot of counting and a lot to clarify the texture. And then once we really did, we dug in. It was so fun to just work hard and excavate with this piece. And then it began to reveal itself, this extraordinary piece, which I can't wait for people to get to know. It's called This Delicate Universe. And so it's been an incredible spring. We're also doing a new piece by Don Grantham in June for a chorus of 180, big orchestra, and a big psalm setting, which is a bit like a kind of a fanfare, the whole thing, a big overture. It's very exciting. So been fun creating, kind of midwifing the new pieces down here this spring.
Well, for those of you just joining us, we just streamed Conspirare's recording of Joby Talbot's Path of Miracles on our 24/7 choral stream, which you can find at www.yourclassical.org. And we're joined here with Conspirare's artistic director and conductor, Craig Hella Johnson. And we're just going to have a nice, casual, fun conversation about this incredible project that they took on and recorded this past year. I just got to ask you, why this piece? What drew you to this piece?
There's just nothing like it. It's the first time I heard it, was in recorded form, a beautiful recording, and Tenebrae put that out, and I just fell in love with the piece. I needed to learn it, know it right away, just for my own pleasure. And we're so used to the short form in choral music, these short 4 or 5 minute pieces, and we love that. There are these statements that happen in 4 or 5 minutes, but I so long for longer thoughts, longer sentences. Want to bring us back to listening to, something where we can sit in and be in it for a while. This piece, brought that in such a satisfying way, and the choral textures, as folks who just listened have heard, I mean, they're completely distinctive, and I feel like it's going to become a major piece in our choral repertoire moving forward. I'm so happy to see people performing it now. I know it's been performed in Minnesota within the last year or so, and I'm just thrilled about it. It's and everyone can relate to it. It's about the human journey, and we all are on each our own individual journeys, and we're on a collective journey. And so I just love this music. Is all I can say. It's one of my favorite pieces, really.
Well, we're starting to get questions in from a lot of people, and I want to get that moving so we can get people excited about your answers. I know people have a lot to ask you, so let's go ahead and get started. I have a question here from Vaughn. It says, what is it about a pilgrimage that speaks to the 21st century audiences and composers, and to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And well, I think we immediately identify just as a human being, not even just as a classical music listener, but as a human being, we identify with this sense of a journey. And from a composer's standpoint, and especially a choral composer, as I mentioned before, I don't think choral composers get a chance to kind of create these longer, larger arches and to draft sort of a narrative, whether it's just a representational piece or something more abstract, but this is long thoughts. So it's a musical journey that we get led into. It's an opportunity for a composer to pull out all kinds of tools from the toolkit and all kinds of fragments from the imagination, because that represents a journey. It's not just a one-dimensional statement. It's not just a one-faceted kind of experience. And yeah, it's one of the things I really fell in love with about this piece. And I think we love to think about the journey, the Camino, this great pilgrim pathway that hundreds of thousands of folks have taken over many, 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 many years, decades, centuries. And what is it that they're seeking? It's fantastically interesting. What is it that people are seeking by this walk? And is it something they feel individually called to, or are they sort of culturally conditioned to think, oh, I hear other people are taking this pilgrim walk? We're all on this search for meaning in our lives. I feel like even if we're not aware of it, even in our crazy periods in life or our distracted periods, there's some part of us that's expressing a desire to find meaning and to find understanding of what this human experience is. And so it's such an attractive thing to put in front of people to say, this is a piece that reflects journey and many people's journey. So there's a historical aspect of it too, which is so interesting, and a religious and cultural aspects that are so fascinating about people taking this journey, and the things that we relate to on this Camino, the heat, the hardship that comes along the way, the stumbling and the stones on the path, and having to face one's interior self along the way, with nothing to distract except the path itself. You have to face yourself, and so this and 100 other things that are just compelling about it. It's great, and then it works as a musical piece because Joby brings us on a musical journey, which has a beginning, many steps along the way, a middle, and an end, and it feels so complete. When you began our hangout tonight, it was fun, Tessa, because you were in the exhale of that journey, and you expressed it so beautifully, taking a few minutes, and that spoke to it right there.
Mm. So I read where they talk about it's one of the thin places of the world. Talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah. This has been one of those places that's been described as sort of an easier place to access the divine. An easier portal, perhaps, that many have expressed, many, many, many. And some people in this country talk about Sedona in that way. They go to Sedona in Arizona, and many people think of that as sort of an energy vortex or a thin place. And then I think some of us have places that we experience sort of in our personal journeys that might be thin places or thin place experiences. I know when I've been close to to a loved one who's dying in that sacred time, that's to me has been a thin place, a time when I really feel a much easier, natural connection to, I guess, what I would just call for tonight, divine current. And so that's what people speak of when they talk about, especially the end of the Camino, but throughout the journey, that this is one of those thin places. So it's fun to hear the stories of people's experience and how they experience it as a thin place. And what was great about performing this piece was that so many people came out of the woodwork who either have done the Camino or want to do it, and have some who said, I've longed to do this for years, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm going to make this pilgrimage. And so it was a great opportunity both just to talk about that in terms of taking a trip and doing that really interesting thing, but also just to hear what their thoughts and impressions might be about why do you want to take this trip? What is it that calls to you with this trip? So, yeah.
Maybe that's a Conspirare tour you can set up. Come and you'll take the pilgrimage together, and people can walk with you on that journey. And I think that would be such a deeply spiritual event for so many people. So,
You knew we were talking about it, yeah. And we want all you guys to come from our MPR family.
okay. So this piece has such a long arc, and does it remind you of any other pieces, passions, masses, cycles, anything that you've done before?
I mean, it kind of does. Yeah, I mean, it feels a little to me like Rachmaninoff, the all-night vigil in a way. That's a journey. It it also, in a similar way. I don't know if you or some of our listeners know that wonderful piece of Rautavaara, great Finnish composer, that he wrote his own vigil, his all-night vigil called Vigilia. Same thing with that. I think it's maybe it's because those are sort of also very intentionally journeys of the spirit and that's kind of more in a liturgical format that you take that journey as opposed to a physical place. But yeah, those pieces especially remind me of it, and they're also a cappella pieces. So this, Joby's piece is primarily a cappella with the exception of the crotales and just those few percussion elements. But otherwise, it's all just standing there naked with the human voice, the human experience, our breath. Yeah, those pieces come to mind. How about for you, Tess? If anything hit you?
Well, I felt like Joby was channeling his inner parrot. I felt like, I mean, but gorgeous writing, gorgeous lines, and congrats on a fantastic piece of music. Really, really, really beautiful. I
Is
want to
that
know, I want to ask you, could you talk about like the spatial element of the work and how that came into play for the recording?
Yeah. Well, physically, we took Joby's suggestion. He was really open in terms of his recommendations in the score to, not that we had to be literal with them, kind of recommendations in terms of some things they did at the premiere, but we kind of fancied around them. But we were in a beautifully reverberant space when we premiered it here, St. Martin's Lutheran Church in Austin, and we started in a circle. We did some lighting with it too, and when someone gets the CD, you'll find in the notes Joby talks beautifully about his first experience hearing this Pasaput tradition, which comes from a Taiwanese choir tradition, and it's a fascinating color. And those who heard it tonight hear this very bass, original, kind of deep in the belly, primal sound that emerges and then goes up screaming to the top of the soprano register. And then we played with that a little bit and had Cameron Beecham, our dear bass, play with some throat singing, and so that was actually in Joby's score, but we asked if Toby was open to blessing that, and he was. It kind of weirded up a little more too, and I love it.
That's actually I remember listening in the car, and I'm driving in my the choir mobile, and you get to that B and C dissonance, and I'm just like, I'm just like, I noticed, I look down, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm speeding, I need to slow down now.
That's a good one. Now be careful on the road.
I know.
You kind of have to watch, like, I think one reviewer wrote recently too, you kind of have to play with the levels because it starts out so quietly. I forget if it's 4 or 5 P's in the score, so we really tried to take that seriously, just coming from nothing. And then it just emerges and gets louder and louder. So once you've heard it once, you can kind of set your levels. You don't get blasted out like at 3 minutes in.
Yeah, I think once they get to the top, once they get to the top of the gliss, it's just like, oh, I need to turn this down pretty quickly.
That's right. That's right. It's yeah. I love that opening. I want to hear more of it, so I will often turn mine up a little right at the beginning and then just modulate it down a bit. Yeah, but we walked around the room a little bit. I think simply stated, we did some very minimal staging and some kind of sweet and simple lighting that really supported this. I think people loved the experience physically. There's that gorgeous place where it opens up into that gorgeous E-flat major sonority, and we move out into the hall where we sing "We Shall Walk into Jacob's Land," Jakob's Land, and then we processed into the hall, and eventually sang kind of in a textured way, probably in the first 5, 6 rows, if you will, around and out of this space. And then eventually we come into essentially a circle. Uh, I really wanted to surround the audience when we sang that extraordinarily special part. The text from Robert Dickinson's libretto, that's "Here is a miracle, that we are here is a miracle." We sing this right in the center uh, of that third movement, and it's a very special moment. Yeah, I just had the feeling like I could probably perform this, kind of like has Messiah resonance for me, like Handel's Messiah. Like, this will never get old to me. It's so extraordinarily beautifully written, and so yeah, we had a ball shaping this, and this is a piece I would love to tour with, just because every night, you have a new story with it.
Speaking of touring, we are so excited here at American Public Media to be bringing Conspirare to Minnesota next year for an all Paulist program. Super excited about that.
Oh, Jess, but we're so excited too. Of course, personally, it's like an incredible blast for me coming home, to all my people in Minnesota. And I love that. And I love that we can share all of that great music of Stephen Paulus with the American Public Media audience also. And we're so excited. I'm going to spend some time curating that program. I'm going to get with some of Stephen's family and certainly some of his dear friends. And I've got the entire stack of music here in Austin. I wanted to have all the music. I think I have stacks of everything but Christmas, because we're probably not going to do some of the Christmas things, but I want to sort of hold every score and spend time with it and make decisions. So we can't wait to come to Minnesota, and we're so excited to be hosted by you guys.
Yeah, you're coming back home, and I was just in your hometown in Virginia, Minnesota. Shout out to the Virginia, Minnesota High School and Junior High School Core Program. Had a blast up there. Beautiful town. The auditorium is breathtaking.
Is
And
that incredible?
yeah, and could you talk to us about your path began there in Virginia, Minnesota, and you were in that auditorium all the time. Talk to us about the beginning of your path.
Yeah, well, as Ted Baxter on the Mary Tyler Moore show, he said, it all started at a 4,000-watt radio station in Sacramento. I won't go that far back. No. Anyway, yeah, I'm so excited you were in Virginia. And yeah, big shout out to the hometown folks, and Matt, who's doing such a great job with the choirs there, and the Baldricas are still there, and so many others. It's really thrilling. And yeah, I had a great time. I moved to Virginia. I was born in Brainerd, Minnesota, home of Paul Bunyan. So if anyone's seen Fargo, they've kind of seen where I was born. And also, very strangely, too, thinking of Fargo for a moment of trivia, my mother's name is Marge, and of course that main character in Fargo was Marge. Marge. I thought, this is my life. Yeah. I used to cry when, Paul Bunyan, if some of you are familiar, when you walk in, I guess your parents or your guardians or whoever takes you there, your older brother or something, tells the guy at the admission, if you're like a little kid, what who's coming. So here comes Craig. So I suppose I was 4 years old or something, 5, and so you walk into the Paul Bunyan Park, and this ginormous, statue of Paul Bunyan, and the speakers that are, his voice come out and say, "Hello, Craig, welcome," and I burst into tears, and so that's my memories of the Paul Bunyan Park. Anyway, yeah, so I was born in Brainerd, moved to Virginia when I was in kindergarten time, and went to high school there, and it's amazing. The auditoriums that could be built up in that northern region were so special. There was a lot of money from mining back in the day. Of course, there's a lot of mining up there still, but there was, I think, quite the heyday when all of the schools had pools that were really gorgeous. That was quite unheard of in other places at the time. And these beautiful auditoriums, I remember the beautiful chandeliers that were hanging, and the acoustics were lovely. So yeah, all of our assemblies were there, and I performed on that stage. I remember playing the first movement of the Beethoven Appassionata Sonata on that stage for my classmates, and it was a great piano, except the wheels on the piano weren't locked. They hadn't remembered to check. and so I was playing and kind of having to grip the keys because the piano was slipping down stage. Um, anyway, it was a great place to go to school and to grow up. There's also a beautiful auditorium in Hibbing, Minnesota. I don't know if you've been up there, but that's another special one. So yeah, that was home, and went to beautiful St. Olaf College in Minnesota. I felt so lucky to go there, and and I was a pianist growing up, and still think of myself kind of born as a pianist. That's where I feel most at home, even though I don't get to play so much anymore. And had a great piano teacher, Margaret Damberg. I love to say her name. She's not with us anymore, but she came from a beautiful tradition from the lineage of Leschetizky and Dochnani, and there she was up on the Iron Range, teaching me how to sing with my fingers. That was what she used to say. I always have to have a singing tone through the piano. And yeah. Anyway, so yeah, and then the rest is kind of. I went to Illinois for a degree and Juilliard for some time as a pianist, and studied at the International Bach Academy in Stuttgart in Germany with Helmut Rilling, which was a thrill, and did a doctorate at Yale. Had a beautiful experience there. Felt very lucky to kind of get to do all of those things and many other things along the way. So yeah, it's fun coming home to Minnesota, thinking about coming back to my journey's beginning.
You know, one of the things you were talking about a bit of trivia at the beginning of your answer, and I was like, I wonder if people knew that you were the homecoming king. Talk to us about that. You didn't think I was going to bring something up like that, did you?
I was. Well, you were in Goodman Auditorium, so that was where I was crowned.
So were you like the super popular kid?
I don't think so. I mean, what was really interesting about that, normally in a lot of small towns, there's sort of a football star that gets crowned, and that was the funny thing. I mean, I was the band nerd and the choir nerd and student council president, and I had a lot of friends. I mean, I loved. It was a happy time for sure, but that whole thing was certainly a surprise. But what my funny memory of that was in the football game on Friday night after the big coronation. The rest of the members of the court, the other sort of king nominees or princes or whatever, they were all big football players, and they had big pads on, and so at the halftime presentation of the king and his court and the queen and her court, they we all came out, and I of course was playing in the band, and these three guys, big guys, came out with their big pads, and so I was kind of a little king with my little blue band uniform, and then these big hulking attendants. So, yeah, that's a funny memory. That's great. Yeah.
I want some pictures. Do you have any pictures of this?
I know. I bet my mom does, and so I might be listening. So we'll do a shout out to Marjorie in St. Paul, and maybe she can get looking. We'll figure. Yeah, certainly the yearbook. We'll find.
Anybody with pictures of this, please tweet it out right now using the hashtag Choral Debut. For those of you that are just joining us, we are live here with Craig Hella Johnson, the artistic director and conductor of Conspirare. We just listened to their most recent recording. It is Joby Talbot's Path of Miracles here on our 24/7 choral stream, which you can find at www.yourclassical.org. And to get back to that piece of music, as you got into this piece, did it surprise you at all? Like, were you ever like, what? Yeah, did it surprise you? Let's leave it there. I'll let you talk.
Yeah. Well, different kinds of surprises. Yeah. I mean, what surprised me in a kind of gestural, physical way was just how kind of bold he was to just do things like with the sopranos. There's this section where they're hammering out da 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 da, just on a high G, like repeated for measure after measure after measure after measure. Stuff that the faint of heart or faint of physical stature in the soprano section might say, "Oh, I can't do this with my voice." And I just love that he just went for it. It's such a physical piece. That's one of the things that's so fun.
The demands are pretty hard on. I mean, the voice, big time.
Big time. Yeah, because you got to drive that thing for, the 70 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that surprised me how often he would just go for it. And also it surprised me how fresh and different it was. There was I was thinking of the overlap and overlay in the last movement, which starts out. It sounds canonical in some places. It is in some places it's actually not. But it's just beautiful layering and weaving. That was just like, wow, I've never heard anything like that, and I loved it, and it felt so imaginative, and yeah. And then I think the surprise of what a big heart this piece has, like, it always moved me just in a emotional way, and I loved that it, we felt so engaged, like I say, physically, like you said, the demands are great. Musically, you got to be really on your game, because you're doing all kinds of uh, things which demand musical skill, intellectual readiness. But then it's so moving. It feels so real and authentic. It doesn't feel historical in that sense. It doesn't feel in any way academic. Um, it's not an observer piece. I mean, it's a really engaging piece that way. So it's fantastic. Such a fun question.
Uh, One of the moments of heart that just really struck me is during the fourth movement when they get to at the western edge of the world and the basses are singing that part, and I'm just like, oh, it's just so stunning. And there's so many gorgeous moments throughout, and there's so much tension. I mean, you can feel the pain and drudging during the second movement, and it's just so well written.
It is, isn't it?
What?
It's the whole section in the second movement where the pilgrim is really haunted by demons.
Mhm.
They're that appear to be outside the body, but you wonder, are they external? Are they internal? It's just it's fantastically interesting in terms of parallels to the human journey of ours.
It's the singers, Minnesota. It's a professional choir in Minnesota. They performed the piece up here, and they just tweeted out. They said, "The devil waits." Hashtag the devil waits, and you really feel the demon almost possessing the spirit during that movement. So to get you out of here, we've been talking for about 30 minutes, and I just want to. What was your most spiritual moment during the recording process? I want you to go and share with us a moment that you can recall that you just had to stop, take a breath, and just take a moment.
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, there were a handful of moments that jumped to mind just as you were asking the question, but the one that's central to me is one I referenced earlier. But it's for me when I get to stand in the middle of that circle, and the singers sing, "Here is a miracle. That we are here is a miracle." And I asked of myself, and I asked of the singers, what does it mean in a moment like this to be utterly present to this little phrase of text and this beautiful, simple statement at the core of this piece, to really let time stop. And it felt for me always like time stopped at that moment if we were present to it, behind the eyes of that phrase, so to speak. And I was moved each time with that. And one felt, even in the room, like that sense of being out of time, just for those measures, was palpable for so many people. And that would be it, I think, Tesfa. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me tonight. Do you have any parting words for people that are looking to maybe perform this piece? Maybe you can inspire some choirs to take the plunge into such a fantastic piece of music.
Oh, just that. I mean, take the plunge. Go for it. It is so worth it. And yes, there are places here that are difficult, but it would be ultimately, I think, one of the most satisfying choral experiences together with other people that you can have. I want to see a lot of people performing it and going for the dare. It's such a great mountain to climb.
All right. Thank you for joining us tonight, Craig, and thank you to all of the listeners out there that tuned in to our 24-hour choral stream to hear the choral debut of Conspirare's Path of Miracles CD. Until next time, take care.